Hello, good neighbors. I just wanted to talk briefly about the 1990 redistricting. I think it's clear to me that we really haven't had fair representative uh, government here in Buffalo for at least 30 years. So it starts in 1990. So really the first big thing to understand is the demographic change that the city saw in the 80s. So every 10 years, federal law requires that we redraw our district lines to kind of balance the population between council districts. So in the 1980s, really the big demographic shift in our city was a lot of white flight. So 40,000 white residents left the city. Meanwhile, minority votes, the black population stayed relatively constant, grew slightly. And between 1970 and 1990, the city lost 150,000 white residents. So that was really kind of the major demographic shift that the 1990 reapportionment had to deal with. And I mean, look at this Fillmore district. So this is the Fillmore district here. You can see that. I mean, and then look what the Fillmore district is today. It's kind of really wrapped around. So it used to be primarily on the east side, and in 1980 the Fillmore district was kind of split between black and white, so about 50-50 split population-wise. As part of the 1990 reapportionment, the Fillmore district became a majority white district, 62% white, despite the city losing 40,000 white residents. And Dave Franczak, his father, Dave Franczak is the Fillmore council member at this time, and his father somehow ends up appointed to the commission that draws the maps. So the first thing is the demographic change in the city. The second major headline of the 1990 reapportionment was the Pitts petition. So council member James Pitts, who is the council member of the Ellicott, filed a petition trying to do a referendum to put the redistricting plan to a vote. He had 9,000 signatures. He submitted his petition 20 minutes before the deadline, and this created a really contentious and confusing summer, because during this time, not only was the city redistricting, but council members were primarying, because there was a primary in September and a general election in November. So while candidates were canvassing and campaigning for the council, it was unclear the whole time what map was going to be used. Were the 1980 maps going to be used, or were the new 1990 maps going to be used? This ended up getting shot down, and the new districts lines ended up being the ones for the race, but that was not clear until 3 days before the primary. So on September 9th, it was officially confirmed, and the 6 lawsuits were all finally dismissed, and the new maps took hold 3 days before the primary. Now, so the Fillmore district, Dave Franczak was challenged by Ada Deans, which, funny fact is, Ada Deans she canvassed on the old maps, and during the primary, if she had won, she wouldn't have been an actual resident. So Ada Deans' house was in the Fillmore district in the 80s, and then was drawn out and changed to the Masson district. So she was actually on September 12th a resident of the Masson district, but ran for Fillmore. And Dave Franczak ended up winning 80-20. So why does this matter? So if you remember the 2022 reapportionment recently, there was this guy, chair of the Citizens Committee on Reapportionment, where one person showed up. And this is Dave Franczak. So 30 years later, Dave Franczak was gerrymandering us in 1990, and then 2023 somehow ends up the committee to reapportion us. So in summary, the 1990 reapportionment, 3 major takeaways was the demographic change of the city. So the white flight was very prevalent during the 1980s and the 1970s. The controversy around the map. So the city experienced 6 lawsuits. The Hispanics for Equitable and Fair Reapportionment sued the city. The NAACP sued the city. At some point, the Republican Party threatened to sue the city to stop the new redistricting plan. But ultimately, the council's plan, which gave a white majority district to Dave Franczak, despite the white flight, ended up being approved 3 days before the primary. And then Dave Franczak ultimately won the primary handily over his challenger, Ada Deans, by an 80-20 margin. Hopefully that's a little background on the reapportionment and a little history of how we got the districts we are today, because today the Fillmore district has really spiraled into something that's a little egregious. So thanks for tuning in, and write in Austin for City Controller on November 7th.